Hello everyone, I'm Himani Joshi. I'm doing PhD under Dr. Sumit Tarak. In this presentation, I'm going to discuss my PhD thesis work that is on intelligent and reconfigurable wideband spectrum characterization at sub-Nyquist rate. In this presentation, first I'm going to discuss the motivation and research objective, and then I'll discuss the proposed work. The first work is on learning and decision-making algorithm for sub-Nyquist sampling. The second work is on sub-Nyquist sampling-based intelligent ultra-wideband angular spectrum sensing. In the third work, I'll discuss the developed hardware testbed for the proposed ultra-wideband angular spectrum sensing. The fourth and last work is on sub-Nyquist sampling-based automatic modulation classification. Finally, I'll discuss the conclusion and future works. As we all know that the data rate requirement has been increasing exponentially, and the recent survey by Ericsson has shown that this data rate requirement has reached 2 exabyte per month. The prominent solution to meet such a high data rate requirement are: first is to increase the available spectrum to millimeter wave, second is to increase the base station density, and third is to improve the spectrum utilization efficiency in sub-6 GHz band. These techniques have their own limitations, like the millimeter wave have limited coverage and it restricts the communication to indoor applications. Increasing the base station density increases the infrastructure cost, handover, and interference among base station users. Sub-6 GHz band has good coverage as compared to millimeter wave, but it has high auction cost. So in order to have good spectrum utilization efficiency, dynamic spectrum sharing approach has been used. It is a promising and de facto approach in recent future wireless standard 4G, which employs LTEU, LAA, LWA, and multiplier techniques. These techniques allows unlicensed sub-6 GHz spectrum to be available for cellular network without compromising quality of service. Similarly, 5G has techniques like anchored NRU, standalone NRU, dynamic spectrum sharing among 4G and 5G users, massive MIMO technique. So these techniques allows dynamic spectrum sharing over the shared and unlicensed bands. This dynamic spectrum sharing is not limited to some small set of bands, but it is spread over a non-contiguous ultra-wideband spectrum. Hence, it requires wideband spectrum analyzer to characterize an ultra-wideband non-contiguous spectrum. This wideband spectrum analyzer needs high Nyquist rate ADCs to characterize the ultra-wideband spectrum, but such a high rate ADCs, as can be seen here, is area, power, and cost hungry. But underutilization of spectrum in temporal and spatial domain causes the wideband spectrum to exhibit sparse characteristics. Thus, by exploring the sparse nature of ultra-wideband non-contiguous spectrum, sub-Nyquist sampling digitization-based wideband spectrum analyzer is desired. And by applying the sub-Nyquist sampling-based low-rate digitization, we can reduce the area, power, and cost by such a large number. Now, I'll discuss the existing sub-Nyquist sampling-based digitization technique. Multi-Cousett sampling is one of the state-of-the-art technique. It uses the low-rate ADCs. Here, T is the Nyquist period and N is the total number of frequency band in the sensed spectrum. So the ADC rate is reduced by N times. And each ADC has a unique time delay of C1T. So if we have N equals to 5 frequency bands and K equals to 3 number of ADC having the unique delay of 0T, 2T and 3T, then active Cousett 1, active Cousett 2 and active Cousett 3 represents the sub-Nyquist sample coming from the output of ADC 1, 2 and 3. But this technique has the limitation, like it requires accurate time delay of Nyquist period, which is of the order of nanosecond, and hence it is very difficult to achieve. The second limitation is that the ADC, low rate ADC works on a wideband signal, which is again difficult to perform. The third drawback is that it performs contiguous sub-Nyquist sampling, which is not desired in our case. Modulated wideband converter is another state-of-the-art technique which overcomes some of the limitation of multi-Cousett sampling. This is the receiver architecture. Before low-rate ADC, it has a mixing unit and a low-pass filter. The mixer used here brings down all the frequency bands of a wideband spectrum to the baseband level. So if we have 5 frequency bands, then it brings all the frequency bands to the baseband level as shown here. But as can be seen here from the figure, it also performs contiguous sub-Nyquist sampling, which is not desired in our case. Finite rate of innovation technique also performs sub-Nyquist sampling, but it performs sampling over the beta selected frequency band. So here is the architecture. Its architecture is almost similar to MWC. The only difference is in the mixing function. It brings down only the frequency band present in beta, where beta contains the indices of all selected frequency bands. So if we have beta equals to 1, 2, 4, and 5, that is, we are skipping the sensing of third band, then it brings only band 1, 2, 4, and 5 to the baseband level. However, the main challenge here is to determine beta, which requires intelligent algorithm. The main challenge in all the sub-Nyquist sampling technique that we have not discussed so far is the occurrence of sensing failure. And it happens whenever the number of BC bands in the sensed spectrum is higher than the number of low-rate ADCs. In case of MCS and MWC, we don't have any control over sensing failure because of non-contiguous sub-Nyquist sampling. Whereas, due to non-contiguous sensing, in case of FRI technique, the size of beta can be controlled and hence we can control the sensing failure. Now, I'll discuss how the size of beta is responsible for successful and unsuccessful sensing. When size of beta is equals to k, then as we'll see later that in this scenario, sensing will always be successful. And when the size of beta is greater than k, then sensing will be successful only if the number of BC bands in beta is less than k, less than or equals to k. So let's consider an example. If we have the frequency spectrum consisting of 9 frequency bands, where 4 are occupied and 3 are number of ADCs. Then if we select beta as B2, B4, B7, then we'll have the successful sensing, but the throughput, that is the number of vacant bands in beta, is equals to 0 because all the 3 bands in beta are occupied. So if we select beta such that all 3 bands are vacant, then we'll have the successful sensing and the maximum throughput achieved would be 3. So this is one scenario where we always have successful sensing. The second scenario is the contiguous sensing, where we are sensing all the bands. Since we have 3 number of ADC and 4 number of occupied bands, it results in sensing failure and thus 0 throughput. But if we intelligently determine the value of beta such that the size of beta is 7, and out of which only 2 are occupied bands, then since 2 is less than number of ADC, that is 3, then sensing would be successful and it will give the throughput of 5. Hence, beta and size of beta should be selected such that throughput of the sense spectrum is maximum without having any sensing failure. So the existing LDM algorithms I'll discuss now, but the main point to note here is that the decision of the selection of optimal beta requires the prior knowledge of occupancy statistics of all the frequency bands. So apart from having a good decision-making algorithm, there is a need of learning and decision-making algorithm, which also learns the spectrum statistics. Multi-arm bandit algorithm is one such set of LDM algorithms. It selects a single frequency band at every time slot. And for the selection of frequency bands, it performs exploration and exploitation, where during the exploration, it aims to select all the frequency bands such that learning accuracy improves, whereas in the exploitation phase, it selects the best quality frequency bands. But here, the selection is restricted to only one frequency band. Multiplay multi-banded arm-banded algorithm is extension of MAP algorithms. It selects a set of frequency bands at every time slot. But these algorithms do not consider sensing failure scenario, which happens in a non-contiguous sub-Nyquist sampling. So the research objective of my PhD thesis work is to design an intelligent and reconfigurable sub-Nyquist sampling-based wideband spectrum analyzer for ultra-wideband non-contiguous spectrum. Here, first I'll aim to propose a learning and decision-making algorithm to support non-contiguous sub-Nyquist sampling, which aims to learn the occupancy statistics of every frequency bands and utilize the learned spectrum statistics to determine optimal subset beta to maximize the throughput. Then in the second work, I'll use the proposed learning and decision-making algorithm to perform sub-Nyquist sampling-based wideband spectrum characterization for wideband spectrum analyzer in ultra-wideband non-contiguous spectrum. And here we determine the status of all the frequency bands, that is whether they are occupied or vacant, and for the occupied band we'll determine the carrier frequency, direction of arrival, and modulation schemes. This is the signal model used for LDM algorithms. So this signal model will remain same for other applications as well as we go forward with the presentation. The only parameter will change or tune some parameters that comes with the application. So here the received wideband signal consists of m number of unknown active transmissions. Here AI is the amplitude of the ith active transmission and Fi is its carrier frequency. We have considered that the spectrum is divided into n non-overlapping frequency bands of same bandwidth b hertz. Time-slotted communication is considered here, where the status of all the frequency bands remains static for a given time slot and it can change only in the next time slot. So we have proposed learning and decision-making algorithms for two different kinds of channel statistics. The first statistics is the Bernoulli's channel distribution. The second statistics is the Markovian channel distribution, where the occupancy statistics depends on the transition probability of going from one state to another state. Due to restriction of time, limitation of time, we'll discuss only one of the good proposed algorithm that considers the Markovian channel model. So this algorithm name is K plus B SSLE. So as discussed earlier, it aims to select optimal channel subset beta star such that expected throughput is maximized. Here, S beta is a binary vector with 0 or 1 denoting the vacant or busy state. Q beta is a power set containing all possible realization of S beta. P epsilon beta equals to 0 is the probability of sensing failure, and it is equals to 0 when the number of occupied bands in beta is greater than k. Otherwise, it depends on the probability of the occurrence of S beta. So as the reason for discussing this algorithm is because it has good trade-off between exploration and the exploitation stage, and it aims to perform learning as early as possible. So for the initial time slot onwards, it start performing the exploitation. So for the first few time slot, it selects the size of beta as k and sends all the frequency bands at only for one time. Like for the first time slot, it sends only k frequency band. For the next time slot, it sends next k bands, and so on till all the bands are sent for once. Once learning is done for all the frequency band one time, then from the very next time slot onwards, it determines the instantaneous probability of vacancy for all the frequency bands. And this probability depends on the learned transition probability. Its value is equals to probability of going from 1 to 0, that is occupied to vacant state, if that particular frequency band was part of beta and it was sensed to be occupied with successful sensing. And its probability is equals to 0 to 0 transition if that particular frequency band was part of beta and it was sensed to be vacant with successful sensing, and its value depends on the previous value if that particular frequency band was not part of beta or if sensing failure happens. Once instantaneous probability of vacancy is determined for all the channels of frequency bands, we'll determine the quality index by using the upper confidence bound algorithm. This is the formula for upper confidence bound algorithm. Here, Xe is the number of times nth channel is sensed to be vacant. Tc is the number of times nth channel is sensed, and gamma is the exploration coefficient. In this formula, you see the formula. The first term is the exploitation term, and the second term is the exploration term. So once this QC and omega TS is determined for all frequency bands, we form two sets, beta 1 and beta 2, where beta 1 stores the indices of K bands having highest quality index QC, and beta 2 stores indices of K bands having highest instantaneous probability of vacancy. If beta 1 and beta 2 has same entries, then it means that the learning has been done sufficiently enough. And now we can select the size of beta by maximizing the throughput. Otherwise, we'll select the size of beta as k, which leads to successful sensing and accurate learning. So after determining the size of beta, to determine the quality index, we calculate quality index of each channel of size mod beta by summing the corresponding channel quality index, and then we'll select a subset beta having the maximum value of its subset quality index. So that's how we are finding the subset beta. Now we'll discuss the performance comparison, which is done in terms of regret. It is defined as the difference between the throughput achieved by the Oracle policy and the proposed algorithm. Oracle policy is the one which has the prior knowledge of spectrum statistics, and it determines the throughput as the maximum throughput from the very first time slot. So we have done the comparison for two different cases, spectrum statistics. The comparison is done with respect to K plus epsilon SSLE algorithm and IS algorithm. The K plus epsilon SSLE algorithm performs exploration with the probability of beta, probability of epsilon, and performs exploitation with the probability of 1 minus epsilon. So here, by exploration, we mean to say that the size of beta is restricted to K, whereas in the exploitation phase, we explore size of beta as greater than K. So due to this epsilon probability, the K plus epsilon SSLE algorithm has higher learning rate, due to which it has a higher regret for the initial time slot. Whereas in case of IS algorithm, that is the ideal stationary algorithm, it was similar to Oracle policy. It has the prior knowledge of spectrum statistics, but to determine the size of beta and beta, it uses the stationary probability. So here we can see that for some of the case, it performs similar to the Oracle policy, but in some cases, it is not good at all and hence gives the linear regret. So we can say that in order to when we have the Markovian channel statistics, then in order to have good learning curve, it's better to use transition probability instead of stationary probability to determine the beta. Next, we show the performance comparison for different value of frequency bands and number of ADC. It is observed that due to higher exploration time, the regret increases with increase in the number of frequency bands, that is N, and due to exploration time reduces with increase in K, hence regret also reduces with increase in K, that is number of ADCs. In the next work, I'll discuss the intelligent and reconfigurable ultra-wideband angular spectrum sensing. So first, I'll discuss the existing techniques here. GFDE is joint frequency and DOA estimation. It uses MCS-based digitization. For M users, it requires at least M plus 1 antennas. The another technique is the cascade algorithm, that it is the compressed carrier and DOA estimation algorithm. It uses MWC-based digitization. For M users, it requires at least 2 M minus 1 antennas. But they have the drawbacks, like the architecture depends on the number of transmission or users, which leads to sensing failure whenever the number of transmission is higher than the number of antennas. And the second drawback is that it performs contiguous sensing, which is not desired in case of our ultra-wideband non-contiguous spectrum. So now I'll discuss the proposed ultra-wideband angular spectrum sensing. So its block diagram consists of, like, first we'll have the multiple antenna which are passed which receives the wideband signal and pass it to multi-antenna non-contiguous subnequous sampling architecture, which digitizes the frequency bands that present in beta. Then the subnequous samples are used to perform reconstruction and characterization, where we'll determine the status of all the frequency bands present in beta. Then this estimated status S hat beta along with the subnequous samples coming from other branches are utilized to perform joint angular spectrum sensing, where we are aiming to determine the carrier frequency Fi and DOA theta I of the occupied channels. And then we have the learning and decision making algorithm, which, as discussed earlier, will determine the value of beta. Now I'll discuss all the blocks sequentially. The first block is the multi-antenna non-contiguous subnequous sampling. This is the architecture of the proposed multi-antenna non-contiguous subnequous sampling block. So it consists of L number of antennas. The first antenna has k number of additional branches, whereas other antennas have only one branch. The received wideband signal at the Lth antenna is this, and here we can see it is similar to the signal model that discussed earlier. Only the change is the addition of new term tau L theta I. It is a time delay of ith active transmission at Lth antenna, and its value depends on the geometry of the antenna array and the DOA of the received signal. So as we can see, its architecture, every branch follows a similar architecture as FRI. So the mixing function used here is similar to what used in FRI technique, which brings down only the frequency bands present in beta to the baseband level. Next we'll see how this happens in actual scenario. So if we take the Fourier transform of the mixer output, we'll get this equation. Now we'll see graphically how this equation is realized. So let's consider the wideband spectrum consists of 5 frequency bands with beta equals to 1, 2, 4 and 5. That is, we are skipping the sensing of third frequency bands. Here I equals to 1 is the yellow spectrum, I equals to 2 is the green spectrum, and I equals to 3 is the third spectrum, is the red one. So the second term, that is this one, it is nothing but images of all the frequency bands. So for the I equals to 1, we'll get the images of yellow band. That for I equals to 2, we'll get the images of green spectrum. And for I equals to 3, we'll get the images of red spectrum. So here we can see that only yellow one and the red one are part of are part of beta. So only these frequency bands comes to the baseband level, that is between 0 to B, whereas the green one is not the part of beta, hence it is not present in the baseband level. So when we add all the three images, all the three signals, then we'll get tau y tilde lk, and by applying the low pass filter at the range of 0 to B, we'll get, this is the output of the low pass filter and digitized signal. So here we can see that there are only three unknowns, beta bz, fb and theta b. So these three unknowns are not determined by the other two blocks of the proposed algorithm. So the reconstruction, the characterization block aims to determine the beta bz bands, which hence tells what is the status of S beta, and joint angular spectrum sensing block utilizes the S hat beta and the subnequous samples to determine FB and theta B. The reconstruction and the characterization block utilizes the subnequous samples coming from the first antenna. Hence, the equation that we discussed in the previous slide is now reduced to this one, to the second equation. Here, tau L theta B loses its significance because only one antenna has been used. So in order, so still we are not aware of what is beta bz. So we replace the beta bz with beta. Here ABF will be having the non-zero value when B belongs to beta bz, and it is ABF is contains zero values if B does not belongs to beta bz. So in the matrix representation form, we'll get the equation as y1 equals to alpha x beta, where y1 is K cross Q matrix containing Fourier transform of subnucleus samples. Alpha is K cross mod beta matrix containing alpha KB as its kbth entry, and X beta is mod beta cross Q matrix with ABF as its bth row. Now, the aim of reconstruction and the characterization block is to determine the status of all the frequency bands present in beta. So in order to do so, it performs the reconstruction of X beta. Now the reconstruction depends on the size of beta. So here we consider three possibilities on size of beta. The one possibility is when it is equals to K, that is the number of ADC. In this scenario, the matrix alpha becomes a square matrix, and since the entries of alpha are taken from the independent Gaussian distribution, this alpha matrix becomes an invertible matrix. Hence, its unique solution, hence the unique solution of X beta will exist, and it can be determined directly by taking inverse of alpha and multiplying it with y. Now, once X hat beta is determined, an energy detector is applied to all the reconstructed bands to determine S beta. So this is how, by using the energy inverse operation and the energy detector, we are able to determine the S beta when size of beta is equals to K. The second scenario is when the size of beta is greater than K. So as discussed earlier, unique solution exists only if the number of occupied bands in beta is less than or equals to K. And in this scenario, we have applied Bayesian matching pursuit algorithm to determine the status S beta. The third scenario, where the size of beta is less than K, in this condition also unique solution exists, but it is not an optimal approach, because size of beta when it is less than K, it will not result in maximum throughput. So we have ignored this scenario. So that's how, by using the energy detector and Bayesian matching pursuit algorithm, we have determined the status vector S beta hat. Now this S beta hat along with the subnucleus samples coming from the other antenna branches are utilized to determine F and theta. So as discussed previously, this is the output equation from for subnucleus samples. Now we are aware of beta BZ, so it can be reframed as this equation. Here e raised to j 2 pi fp tau l theta b is a steering element, and since we are not aware of fp and theta b, we have used the grid-based approach over all the frequency ranges and the theta b. So in the matrix representation form, this equation can be written as by LF equals to ECF comma theta CBF. Here ECF is a steering matrix which contains all possible, and it contains e raised to j 2 pi fb tau l theta b, and it contains the value of f and theta such that it ranges for all possible combinations of f and theta. So as we have used the grid-based approach, the spatial grid, that is the grid for theta, ranges from 0 to 180 degree with a resolution of 1 degree only, and the frequency grid is limited to size of beta BZ into B. So the point to note here is that the conventional music algorithm, the grid size covers over the entire Nyquist frequency range. So in our case, since we are aware of what are the BZ bands that we are going to sense, so this grid frequency grid size is reduced to size of beta BZ into B. Now, in order to determine F and theta, carrier frequency and theta, music spectrum is generated for all the possible values of F and for all BZ frequency bands, and wherever we are getting peak in the music spectrum, we are getting to know this is the accurate value of carrier frequency and DOE. Here UN is a noise subspace of autocorrelation of YLF, that is the subnucleus samples. So that's how we are determining Fi and theta I. Next, I discuss the simulation results. So here we have done the analysis for normalized carrier estimation error and normalized DOA estimation error. So these are the results for different value of ADCs. The comparison is done with respect to reference 1 and 2, which are nothing but JFDE algorithm and cascade algorithm. Here we can observe that due to non-contiguous sub-Nyquist sampling, the proposed method has lower number of sensing failure and has lower estimation error. The same results can be seen here when we take the results for different number of samples. Now I discuss the third work where we have developed the hardware testbed to analyze the performance of the proposed ultra-wideband angular spectrum sensing. Here I'll show the demo video for the hardware setup.
In this demonstration, we are going to perform wideband angular sensing over a multi-band signal. Here we transmit directional uncorrelated SC-FDMA signals in some of the frequency bands, and at the receiver, we first determine the occupancy status of these frequency bands, followed by the determination of the direction of arrivals of occupied frequency bands. Since the multiband signal is considered as a sparse signal, we utilize sub-Nyquist samples to perform wideband angular sensing. First, we consider a scenario where we have two directional target signals in the transmitted multiband signal and four antenna sparse array at receiver to perform wideband angular sensing. For the transmission of two directional target signals, we used one NI-USRP 2944R. This USRP provides two transmission channels. To perform directional transmission, we connect two horn antennas to these transmission channels. To perform wideband angular sensing, we configure the antenna array as 4 antenna sparse array. The output of these antennas are connected to the 4 receiving channels of 2 NI-USRP 2944R. To synchronize the local oscillators and ADCs of both the USRPs, we used octoclock, which provides common clock signal and PPA signal to both USRPs. The 4 channels of USRPs have independent analog front end, due to which the signals received from the antenna array include random phase shift. To remove this phase shift, we generate a sine wave which acts as a phase reference signal. The signal is transmitted via ETIS USRP M200 and equal length SMA cables. This signal is then added to the output of the antenna array with the help of combiners. The combined signal is processed by a processing unit to perform wideband angular sensing. In the screen, we can see the outputs. From the frequency spectrum, we can observe that two signals are received at the receiver and two peaks in the music spectrum tells their direction of arrivals, which is around 17 degree and 60 degree. The DUNS and DUSNS show the direction of arrivals obtained when Nyquist samples and sub-Nyquist samples are used for wideband angular sensing. Next, we consider a scenario where we have 3 directional signals in the multiband signal and 4 antenna sparse array at receiver to perform wideband angular sensing. It can be observed from the frequency spectrum that the receiver receives 3 signals and 3 peaks in the music spectrum tells their respective direction of arrivals. Now we see how the direction of arrivals of 3 target signals vary when we rotate the receiver antenna array.
So that was the hardware demonstration of the proposed hardware testbed of ultra-wideband angular spectrum sensing. Now I'll discuss the last work, that is on the modulation classification for ultra-wideband spectrum. So the existing automatic modulation classification techniques uses the log likelihood ratio based classifiers. feature-based classifier, which uses higher order cumulants and sequestrationary features, intelligent learning-based classifier, which uses machine learning and deep learning algorithm for modulation classification. Out of all these techniques, deep learning-based automatic modulation classification have significantly higher classification accuracy, but their limitation is that they are studied only for the Nyquist sampled narrowband signal. The work presented in 5 and 6 references, they uses some Nyquist sampling based feature-based modulation classification, but they also limit their analysis to narrowband signals. So our aim is to perform wideband determination of modulation scheme, where we will determine the modulation scheme of all the frequency bands of a wideband spectrum in a single go. So this is the end-to-end framework where we are performing wideband spectrum sensing, signal recovery, and modulation classification. Here we receive the wideband signal, which is first passes through the sub-Nyquist sampling block. The sub-Nyquist samples along with the sensing matrix is passed through deep learning based digital reconstruction block, where we perform deep learning based wideband spectrum sensing followed by reconstruction. So this DLDR block has pre-processing unit, which consists of 3 steps. The step 1 performs pseudo recovery of the wideband spectrum. Since this spectrum is complex in nature, the step 2 splits this complex signal into real and imaginary part. And in the third step, normalization is performed on the samples. This normalized pseudo-recovered signal is passed through deep learning-based wideband spectrum sensing block. Here we have explored the CNN modulation CNN technique to perform the classification. As discussed earlier, here we are passing all the frequency bands and getting at the output we are getting the status of all the frequency bands of the wideband spectrum. So the point that I want to mention here is that we have done ablution study for different number of layers, different number of filter size and number of filters. And this is the architecture which gives the best classification accuracy. We have done its comparison with respect to the existing OMP technique for wideband spectrum sensing. And this comparison is done over a wide range of SNR and channel distribution like AW generation and relay fading channels. And at SNR of -10 dB, it has observed that we are having the proposed approach has 5%, 5.5%, and 3% higher accuracy as compared to OMP for AWGN, relay, and region fading channels. Then this output is then passed through signal recovery block, which aims to reconstruct the entire wideband spectrum. This wideband spectrum is then passed through symbol recovery block, where at every frequency band, interpolation and root traced cosine filtering unit is present, and wherever we have the occupied spectrum, it performs the symbol recovery. It determines the modulated symbol for that occupied signal. Then we have the deep learning based modulation classification block, where we will determine what are the modulation schemes of the occupied frequency bands. Here, the loss function that we used is the categorical cross entropy function. The point to note here is that this loss function not only considers the error due to wrong modulation classification, but it also considers the error due to wrong classification of spectrum sensing, that is S hat n. So we have proposed two different deep learning based modulation classification. One is the narrowband deep learning classification, which directly takes the recovered symbols as an input, but it has the additional hardware cost because of because having the interpolation and root trace cosine filtering stage for all the frequency bands in the Velcro approach. So the another approach that we have followed is the wideband DLMC, which skips the symbol recovery block and directly gives the reconstructed wideband spectrum to the deep learning based modulation classification. So due to this limitation of time, I'm going to discuss only wideband deep learning based modulation classification. So here we use the CNN architecture for modulation classification. So the input is the reconstructed wideband spectrum, and at the output we are getting the spectrum status along with the modulation scheme. So here the architecture that we have used here, again we have performed the evolution study over different number of layers, filter sizes and number of filters. The point to note here is that the architecture of the CNN is similar to the architecture of the CNN model that we used for deep learning based wideband spectrum sensing. So it gives the better balance of hardware utilization, hardware resource utilization, because both are using both DLWSS and DLMC are using the same CNN model. So now I'll discuss the simulation result for WDLMC block. We have done the classification accuracy comparison with respect to the OMP algorithm, where we use the OMP algorithm instead of proposed DLWSS method, and this comparison is also done with respect to machine learning classifiers, that is the SVM and random forest. And here we have seen that the proposed deep learning model has better accuracy than machine learning algorithms, and also it has better accuracy for the lower SNR. We are having the better accuracy as compared to OMP, and it can also be observed that the accuracy of the proposed method approaches to the Nyquist sampling based CNN classifier accuracy at as we increase the SNR. So this is the result for AWGN channel, and it has the 70 and 78% accuracy when the range of SNR is minus 10 to 20 dB, and it has the range of 0 to 20 dB. So the next result is the WDLMC accuracy for relay and radiation fading channel. So here we observe that the same thing is happening, like the proposed sub-Nyquist sampling based WDLMC performance matches to the Nyquist sampling based DLMC, but this accuracy is very low. So this work is still under consideration. We are working on how we can have the model or different model that we can use, which can result into the better classification accuracy in case of relay and radiation fading channel. Now I'll discuss the conclusion. So first, we have discussed the proposed learning and decision-making algorithm for Bernoulli's channel distribution and Markovian channel distribution. And for the Markovian channel distribution, we have seen that the regret reduces with increase in number of ADC, and regret increases with increase in the number of frequency bands. Then we have discussed the proposed ultra-wideband angular spectrum sensing, which, unlikely to the existing methods, wideband angular sensing method performs non-contiguous ultra-wideband angular sensing and is independent of hardware restriction. We have shown the performance in terms of carrier frequency and DOA estimation error, and it is observed that both the errors reduces with respect to contiguous ultra-wideband angular sensing, and it reduces with increasing number of samples and ADCs. Next, we have seen the hardware demonstration for proposed ultra-wideband angular spectrum sensing for various antenna array configuration and different sparsity level. Then at the end, we have discussed the proposed deep learning based wideband spectrum characterization, where we have proposed the CNN based wideband spectrum sensing and CNN based wideband modulation classification. And it is observed that the classification accuracy, it is higher for proposed method than compared to the existing deep learning or machine learning algorithms. And this classification accuracy increases with increase in SNR. Now I discuss some of the future possible extension of our work. The one extension is to consider frequency hopping spectrum estimation. So currently we have not considered the frequency hopping scenario, where a user changes its carrier frequency in a given sensing time. So when this switching happens, then the sparsity level of the spectrum reduces. So the existing time frequency spectrum estimation technique determines the status either by performing sample by sample reconstruction, or they require the prior knowledge on the hopping frequency. So one of the possible extension is to perform sub-Nyquist sampling based blind time frequency spectrum estimation, where we can put some intelligence to learn the hopping sequence and hopping frequency. Another possible extension of our work is to perform task-based quantization for massive MIMO. In case of massive MIMO, power and cost depends on the operating signal bandwidth and number of quantization bits. The existing work, including our thesis work, employ sub-Nyquist sampling based wideband spectrum analyzer, which focuses only on reducing the operating signal bandwidth. Thus, there is a need to perform sub-Nyquist sampling with lower number of quantization bits, and one approach to perform this task is to use task-based quantization at sub-Nyquist sampling, which can directly perform the quantization on the low-level quantized sub-Nyquist samples. So these are the publications, the demos that we have presented in ICASP and IEEE 5G forum. These are the journals that are already published. This is the list of conferences. This is the credit requirement that I have completed. I have been teaching assistant to several courses throughout my PhD. And here is the list of achievements that I got during my PhD work. Thank you.